hot. Good evening, everyone, and thank you for watching the Barre Beat special night tonight, Tuesday night. Want to say thank you for watching on 802 Scoop, filmed live right here in the Inside Scoop studios. And with us tonight, we have Miss Carol Dawes. How are you doing, Carol?
I'm peachy.
Peachy. And of course, we have the ever lovely Raylene.
Good evening, everyone.
So we wanted to bring Carol in because Carol is truly the subject expert when it comes to city clerk. And
Agreed.
For those that don't know who Carol is,
Was.
or was, sorry. Well, you're still alive, so
Right.
True.
so it is currently still is Carol Dawes. But Carol was our city clerk for 16 years.
Yep.
And
And she'll always be a clerk at heart.
this is true. This is very true.
Yes.
This is very, very true. How you been doing?
I'm doing well. It's funny that you mentioned that. I'm currently working part-time for the town of Berlin. I'm helping their
Nice.
finance department with a bunch of stuff, working on grants, working on their audits and stuff like that. And as I was walking through their town offices today, their clerk stopped me like 4 times and said, "Hey, you'll know this." And then they kept asking me clerk-related questions.
Nice.
And I did know. And actually, my standard response is, even if I don't know, I make it up and say it with enough authority that people just believe me.
Right,
So
then they know.
that's all that matters.
And that
That's another great office up there, though.
Yes.
I lived in Berlin for a little bit,
Yeah.
and I everybody up there, they're great people.
Yeah. I helped out. They went through a period of time in 22 when they were without a clerk for about 2 months, right before the August primary, and I went up and helped them get through the election. So I'm sort of like, have clerk skills, will travel.
Right. The interim.
I worked. I did the same thing in the town of Plainfield earlier this year. I helped them through their town meeting election. So,
Nice.
and that was interesting because they do a combination. They do some stuff by Australian ballot, which I'm used to, and then they do a floor meeting, which I had never done before. So that was, it was a learning curve for me to do that, but really exciting. So.
Well, the clerk position is extremely important, especially when what's the main focus of your job as clerk is elections.
Exactly.
And I would would you mind just giving us like a little bit of a rundown of what the clerk does?
Well,
because I don't want to just say elections.
Yeah. The clerk is the keeper of the municipal records. Town or city records. They're all kept in your vault. You are the custodian of them. Any public records requests come to you, and you have to fulfill them based on the laws. There are very specific laws around providing access to public records. All the land records are in the vault for every piece of property in the city. Every deed, every mortgage is housed there. And I like to remind people that, in a lot of cases, somebody's property, their home, is the most valuable asset that they have. Yep. And we have all that documentation. We hold it for them. We're the keeper of it. We also have birth, death, and marriage certificates. Going back to the beginning of the city, actually going back before the beginning of the city. The city was chartered in 1895, and before that it was just Barre, the whole area, and we have those earlier records also. So we have birth,
Super cool.
death, marriage records going back into the 1700s. And it's fascinating to look through them. One of the things that always blows my mind is the death records are bound. Earlier years, they're bound in books. And a typical year back through, if you're looking at 1912, 1915, whatever, the books are about, an inch and a half thick or so. But if you look at the book for 1918, which was the Spanish flu, it's about 3 times that size.
Oh, wow.
Because of the number of people who died. And if you thumb through under cause of death, 2/3 of them are
Wow.
listed as the Spanish flu. So it really is just an instant snapshot of something that impacted the community in a huge way, just by seeing that extra large book of death records. So, and then there's other things, because Barre City was a hospital, had the hospital up until 1968 when Central Vermont Medical Center opened up. Every birth in that hospital is recorded in the Barre City records, because they're all issued in the town in which the birth happened.
Yeah.
Even if the person lived in Williamstown or lived in Graniteville or whatever, all their birth records are there. So again, you can see the birth books are, 2 inches thick, and then starting in 1969, they go down to next to nothing, because, so you get sort of a snapshot of the history of the community just by looking through the records.
We can go in there and find Phil
That's
Scott.
pretty cool.
Oh yeah, all
Phil
kinds
Scott.
of stuff.
I bet you Tom's in there too. Is he old?
He wasn't born in
Oh, he wasn't?
Barre. No, he
Oh.
moved here as a kid. So
Tom Lozon is a Flatlander? Ooh, Carol's not gonna say.
I don't know exactly where he moved here from, but I believe that he was
I'm a
born elsewhere.
Flatlander, too.
So am I. I was born outside of Philadelphia. So the other things that happen there, of course, are all the vital records. We have birth certificates, death certificates, marriage licenses. We sell marriage licenses for people who want to get married. We do dog licenses. We do, we offer opportunities for notary services. If you need something notarized, we do that. Those are certainly, we deal with liquor license renewals and, different licenses that the city offers. One of the big things, of course, is that we collect property taxes in that office, and that, of course, means that we have a lot of interfacing with the public. Tons of interfacing with the public, and the other thing is that we're the office, and this is not unique to Barre, but the clerk's offices throughout the state are the sort of the first point of contact for people. We answer the phone.
Yep.
So
Right.
you call, we answer the phone, and we get questions, that are all over the board. I know you're not the right place to call, but do you remember the restaurant that was down on North Main about 50 years ago? It was on the left, and can
Right.
you remember the name of it? Yes, it was the Country House. So I mean, you provide that kind of level of service. And then, of course, there's elections. So
Which is really important, and the reason why we're having you on today is because City Council has put on the charter, has put in for a charter change. It wasn't a situation where everybody on the City Council was like, "Yay!" It was
Right.
well, we'll let the people decide on it.
Yep.
There was a couple councilors that were like super pro, and then the others were like no, but they decided to put it on anyway, and it's to turn the clerk position into an appointed position, which of course my feathers went up immediately, but not nearly as much as yours. And I'm there with you. I think it should remain an elected position. And I wanted to bring you on so that you can tell us why it is so important for that charter change to fail and to maintain our independent clerk position.
yeah. And the elections is one of the main reasons. And so and in these days where there's a lot of concerns about election integrity and are they being stolen or are they being, carried out as they should be, an independent clerk is the chief election official for a community. And it's important that they have, that they are an independent person, that they're not beholden to anybody,
Yep.
that they are only beholden to the law and the voters. And an election is a perfect example of that. To me, it really doesn't make sense to have, if they were appointed, they would be supervised by the council. And the council are the people that are on the ballot at town meeting to be elected. So you've got the person who is the chief election official being supervised by the people that are on the ballot. And that, to me, creates a potential conflict.
Yep.
And, could, even if it's just perception is reality when it comes to this kind of stuff. And so it's vitally important to keep that office independent. One of the other reasons is, some of the argument has been that, what if somebody isn't doing the job well, and here in Barre City we have there's 8 elected offices. We have the 6 counselors, the mayor, and the clerk, and that what they're trying to do in this instance is they're singling out the clerk.
Right.
As somebody who needs more supervision or more control or something like that. And we already have a system in place for that. They're only 2-year terms. Somebody isn't doing the job
Right, you
that they
just
should
don't
be
vote
doing.
for them again.
Exactly. 2 years later, they probably will be out and somebody else will be in. But if you're concerned about that and feel like there needs to be another opportunity to oust somebody, why just single out the clerk? Why not put it in so that, counselors and the mayor all get appointed too and are beholden to somebody that can oust them if necessary? It's just, it feels like it's the clerk position is being singled out.
Agreed.
Yeah.
For
So,
sure.
I would
Yeah.
I would agree with that. It definitely it certainly comes across that way. And even though it definitely comes across that way. That's an independent position. And like you said, having it beholden to a group of politicians is a little sketch.
Well, it's not
say
even.
that.
Yeah, and it's not even. I would feel that way about. I don't know. I look at it as if you had a job. Let's just say your job at National Life. Are you going to? You do everything that you can to please your boss on a daily
Yep.
basis because you don't want to be removed or you don't. And so then are you really being true to yourself, true to your constituents, or are you being true to this council that's hovering over your head? And that's what you don't want. And that's the same with you at any job or any, you don't want that to be the case. But
I was saying to somebody the other day that the way I picture the clerk position, the clerk is the only elected official that actually works full-time in City Hall, works with the city staff.
Yeah.
And to me, they are the bridge between
absolutely.
the residents and the city staff. And that is a very important position to have independent. It's important that the clerk be in a position that, if necessary, they can speak truth to power. They need to be able to say, if the council is doing something that, doesn't follow statute or whatever, hey, we need to, this is what it needs to be. I always, when I started, I always talked about how the relationship between a clerk and a council is that the clerk works with the council, not for the council. And that relationship is vitally important to maintain.
And certainly while you were as a clerk, it definitely was work with. You didn't work for us.
No.
I believe I reminded you of that on occasion.
You did. And I'll say, as a city councilor, you having that independent office gave you the power to say, hey, That's not right. That's not correct, and you shouldn't do that. And I don't know if someone in an appointed position
Would dare
will
say that.
dare do that. And that's a huge problem.
It's a very difficult thing.
Yeah.
One of the other arguments that's being made is that if it's an appointed position, then that gives the council the opportunity to look for someone who has the right training and skills, and that an election is just a popularity contest. But when I was first elected in '08, I had none of the training. And there is no such thing as, the technical center doesn't have a municipal clerk position,
Right.
training course.
Yep.
There's no bachelors of municipal clerking available out there. You learn it by doing. I came into the office with no experience. I availed myself of the trainings that were available through the League of Cities and Towns, through the Municipal Clerk and Treasurers Association, through other clerks. There's a wonderful network of clerks providing service to each other and guidance to each other. And then after I got to the point where I knew, I then turned around and paid it forward.
Right.
And provided that same kind of support for newer clerks and treasurers. And so it's there is, I don't know how you would even build a job description that included some kind of training or something. There isn't anything. To me, the number one priority that anybody running for the office needs to have is their interest in serving the people of the city of Barre. That's the most important thing.
Yeah. No, I completely agree. And it's a little concerning that, because I look at it from a political spectrum, because that's, who I am. And to me, it feels like it's consolidation of power. And golly, I feel like we hear complaints about the whole consolidation of powers. And this is just one of those things. Glenn Brummer says, "Well, that sounds reasonable, what you're saying."
Yeah, yeah.
Because it is. And I don't know. It is, and I know when they first came out with the topic, it also felt coordinated, which was very disappointing.
Well, and the other thing is that everybody needs to remember, I was clerk for 16 years. My
Yep.
predecessor was clerk for 13 years. And so I built, systems, I built procedures, I built
Yep.
a reputation. And of course, somebody new stepping into the position is going to have to go through the same
The whole thing. Yep.
You're not going to solve that by having an appointed kind of position. Instead, you have to give people the opportunity to grow into the role, to learn into the role. And you'd have to do that regardless of whether
Yep.
they're appointed or elected.
That's the part I didn't understand. I
Yeah.
kept saying to myself, how is that gonna make a difference? Just because you're appointing somebody doesn't mean that you're going to get the best candidate. Anybody can go sideways.
It's going to have the same amount of time that it takes to
Right.
get used to that particular position.
Yeah.
Right.
And the only difference is that you are now placing that authority to appoint in a political body, right? And with all due respect, depending on who's in office, I may or may not agree with that decision.
Right.
And and that's something that we have to think about as a community. When we vote people in, we have that's our decision. But when you vote somebody in and you make a mistake, then they're appointing people into positions it
becomes a domino
Right.
effect
right.
kind of thing.
Yep.
Exactly.
So, yeah.
Yep.
And with the fact that clerk position is overseeing elections, I do get really creeped out. I know that when you were stepping down, one of the concerns that I had was that somebody was going to go into that position that was not something I would feel comfortable with. And and because of that, the idea of finding somebody else that's more centralized, and thankfully Cheryl stepped up, and I'm just so thankful that she did, because
Yep.
she is just not political at
We,
all.
exactly.
Yeah,
We
yeah.
had a board of abatement hearings last night, and so she and I were talking before the hearings, and we were talking about how, one of the things that I really tried to do during my tenure. Of course, I have personal opinions on things,
Right.
but I really tried to make sure that I was as neutral as possible, as independent as possible. And she's in the same boat. She doesn't, again, I'm sure she has opinions. She's a human being.
Right, exactly.
But she doesn't voice them. She doesn't, load them on anybody. She keeps them to herself, and she's doing the work. And yeah, it takes time. She hasn't been in office a year yet. This is going to, our May 13th election will be her first
year,
annual meeting election. I was talking to somebody the other day, and they said, "Oh yeah, you need to at least have a year before you've really done everything once." I said, "No, you have to have 10 years before you've done everything once, because reapportionment after the census happens only once every 10 years."
Yeah.
I was in office for 16 years. I was lucky enough to do it twice. But it's the kind of thing where these. I mean, she, talk about trial by fire. She got elected last May, and then had
Yep.
3 budget revotes for the school, and a state
Right.
primary, and a November general election, and she's already
All the
done
whammies.
Yeah, she did the town meeting election this year for the school and for the career center. So I mean, she's already got like 8 elections
A
under her
caucus.
belt.
She did a caucus.
Yep, she's done
she
that too.
literally-
That's right. She's done, yes. That is trial by fire.
Don't bring a plate,
absolutely.
Cheryl. Bring a platter.
So it's part of the learning curve, and she still reaches out to me. She knows that I'm happy to answer any questions. She sent me an email today. Hey, she forwarded something to me and said, "What's how should I deal with this? You had any and we communicate all the time. So yeah.
Yeah. So your recommendation on voting for that article?
It's Article 3. It's Article 3, and I'm encouraging people to vote no on it. I've got an op-ed coming out in the Times-Argus, hopefully sometime this week, that lays out a little more about why I believe that maintaining the clerk position as an elected position is what's in the best interest of the city of Barre. So look for that.
All right. Awesome. Do you want to talk about anything else on the ballot? Anything exciting?
I'm so impressed with the budget, the city budget. I really am. The city has been through trying times over the last couple years, and if you look at the numbers, the expense budget is actually lower than the current year expense budget. They actually managed to trim expenses to get that number lower. There will be a tax rate increase, but that's because we got $1 million from the state last year as sort of flood recovery assistance.
Right.
And we don't have that this year, and we need to make up for that. But because of the trimming that they were able to do in the budget itself, the expense budget, and they managed to find some additional revenue sources, new revenue sources, or enhanced revenue sources. They've kept the tax rate increase down to a reasonable level. It's less than 6 cents. 6%. And there will be an op-ed coming out about that too, I'm sure this week. I read Nicholas's op-ed, but to keep the expense budget lower than the current year in the face of 18% increases in health insurance and increases in wages across the board is really phenomenal. So, and a testament to the management skills between our city manager and the assistant city manager, who's also our finance director, Dawn. The two of them are doing yeoman's work to get, and yeowoman's work to keep us moving forward in the right direction. And in addition to that, another article on the ballot is for paving and
Yes.
capital improvements. And as we all know, who drive the city streets, we're in desperate need of a
paving.
little injection into our paving program. So that's been ramped up a bit. And in addition to that, of course, the voters a few years ago approved the local option tax.
Yeah.
So we collect an additional 1% on rooms, meals, alcohol, and sales. And that puts over $1 million directly into the capital fund for the city of Barre. Doesn't go for general operating or anything. It goes right to capital needs. And there's a tremendous amount of capital needs. So that's $600,000. I strongly recommend that people approve that article also.
Yeah, we definitely need to kick up our game for our roads, and I'll take full credit for unfortunately I was there when we removed some of that money. Yep.
It wasn't anybody's fault. The intention, based on the numbers that we were getting from the Department of Taxes, our estimations for what the local option tax we're going to raise allowed us to say, okay, we can cut back a little bit on what we're asking the voters for capital and paving, because we're going to get it from the local option taxes.
Yep.
But as it turned out, the numbers that the Department of Taxes used was based on the whole Barre area.
Oh.
Anything using the 05641 zip code.
Yep.
And the local option tax, of course, would just
Be the city.
right.
Yep.
And so the numbers were considerably lower than we had anticipated. And so we sort of, we ended up taking a step backward through that. But we have, between the addition of the local option tax on sales, which went into effect 3 years ago, and now the increase, the requested increase on the ballot, we're going to get back to where we need to be. So,
Good.
We'll have nice roads like we did when Tom was mayor the first time.
well, yeah, we put through the, what was it, $1.75 million bond to jumpstart the paving program, and that definitely worked. But the most important thing is to then continue that investment on a regular basis, and it's hard to do.
Yeah.
It's hard to do because something else breaks or a piece of equipment dies and
Or
has
the
to be
city floods
replaced.
2 years in a row.
Exactly. So
Yeah.
it's hard to you build a prioritization list, but you also have to realize it's a living, breathing document, and it might have to change. So
Yep.
You heard our charter changes passed? House and
yes,
Senate?
yep, they're
Are
sitting
you
on the
excited?
governor's desk. I saw that. I looked at it is. It says it's gone to the governor. So
He hasn't signed it yet. Should we ask him to do a ceremonial signing of it?
I don't care. I don't care if he uses a crayon.
Right. Just
get
do
it
it.
signed.
Just do it.
Yes, we were promised that would be expedited back in January.
My goodness. So in defense, I had it in like the first
know
week
you
of
did.
January, and I was constantly harassing GovOps.
Yeah.
Lisa Hango could tell you how much I was harassing, and so couldn't Matt and VL Coffin and all of them.
Yeah.
I was constantly going upstairs. Have you passed my charter changes? Have you passed my charter changes? And yeah, it just
Well,
took
and
forever.
to give them their due,
Well,
they
they
were
busy.
busy
Yeah.
with the election
Yeah.
stuff from, was it Brattleboro, Bennington,
But it was
Bennington,
Bennington
right? Yeah.
one, I think.
Yeah.
Powell,
Pownell.
Pownell, something like that.
I don't. Yeah, it had
It
to
wasn't
do with
Pollitt.
there was a there was a discrepancy in demarcations between voting districts, and people who were on one side of the street had been allowed to vote in the ballot on the other side of the street, and because things had been changed during reapportionment, and then one candidate won, but the difference was narrow enough
Right.
that
Yeah.
so they had to really dig deep into, what's the law, to get it taken care of.
But
So-
it is why they whisper about you in the hall and say, "Oh my God, here he comes."
Yeah, well, that and everybody. Well, that's not true. When I bring it up, when I tell people I'm the flag charter change guy, oh my goodness.
It's kind of like when you used to say, I'm the chicken counselor.
Yes, yes. We do have a bill hanging on the wall somewhere in that state house about egg-laying hens, and I am terrified somebody's going to take it up. Terrified. It's like, the sky's falling. Terrified. Chicken Little reference.
Yes, yes.
But yeah, no, it's
Good
yeah.
gracious.
We do have a couple other charter changes on the ballot this year, in addition to the clerk position. And these other two I do support. One of them it's a tiny tweak, but it would allow the city manager or another official that, as named by the council, to sign documents associated with purchase or sale of real estate. And it's mainly something just meant to help smooth the transition. It still requires council approval. They still have to, vet all the documents and all that kind of stuff. It's just that for timing purposes, rather than having to try to find a time when the mayor is available to attend a closing or whatever, that kind of stuff. So that's a good change, just helps smooth things along. And then the other one is, if you go back 15 years ago,
Less than 15.
probably
'Cause I was there.
Barre City Charter used to have language that said, "Thou shalt not carry a fund balance." If at the end of a year you ended up with, in the black essentially, for regardless of how you ended up there, if you just were really careful with your money, if you whatever, if you ended up with $10 in the black, you couldn't carry it as a fund balance, as a rainy day fund, as an emergency fund. You had to use it to reduce property taxes in the new year. And while that sounds great, sounds like a perfect idea, it doesn't give you the opportunity to sort of keep things level and even. If you end up with a big fund balance and you have to put it into lowering the tax rate the following year, you essentially have artificially lowered the rate. So in the next year, you may have to get back to
way back
So
up.
you don't have an opportunity to sort of just even things out.
Yeah.
So what happened less than 15 years ago, according to Michael, the voters approved a charter change to remove that language and to allow the city to carry a fund balance of up to 5% of the budget. So the budget's at that point in time was like $12 million, so you could have $600,000 in a fund balance. And that fund balance, it really was meant to be like a rainy day fund, an emergency fund. And we worked our way up to that actually over the last few years. It's pretty much gone now because of the flooding, because we had to go dig into it, which is exactly what it was there for. The proposed language in the charter change would increase that from 5% to 10%. So again, this year we're looking at a $15 million, I think it's about $15 million budget. So you'd be able to keep up to 1.5 million. Now, there's no way you're going to get that in 1 year.
Right,
It's, you know,
right. That's not
but
gonna happen.
it takes
Right.
it takes some time. But it gives you an opportunity to build up to a more comfortable cushion. Our auditors recommend that municipalities have 3 months of operating support and, you know, of operating money in a reserve so that you can use it. And that would be, you know, a little over 8%. So we're looking at something just a little bit higher than that. I think it's a great idea to have that as an option. You know, you can always, this year, actually, in an effort, in addition to the expense budget that is lower than the current year, they did take, but we did have a little bit of fund balance at the end of FY24, fiscal year 24, and that is being used to help keep the tax rate down. So it does give the option, you can do that if that's the right move, but by having the option to carry a fund balance, it allows you to, you know, plan for the emergencies.
Right.
So.
Some reason I thought it was removing.
Sounds super smart to me.
I don't know why. Some reason I thought it was removing that ability to maintain 5%.
No, you read it wrong.
I definitely read it
Well,
wrong.
the only thing I
'Cause-
can think of is, you know, you saw that it crosses out 5%, but it raises it to 10.
Maybe
So.
because when I saw it, because I was like, why are we doing this? And do you remember me talking to you
Yeah.
about it? And
Yeah,
like,
and I-
why?
Yeah.
And
I wondered why you were,
Upset.
you know, yeah.
because I was like,
I remember.
no,
well,
we-
you talked about it here too.
Yeah,
You were
now I
like,
feel bad.
"What
Like,
the hell's
everybody
going on?"
Oops.
Well, now you know.
This is the reason why we have Carol come on.
That's right.
So that she can tell us the truth.
You should have phoned a friend before now.
I should have phoned a friend because I was wicked confused as to why.
Yeah.
And I must have, obviously I read it wrong.
Well, I will tell you, that's one of the concerns about charter changes. We're required, the way we're required to put them on the ballot can be really confusing. Because what you have to do is you have to put the language as it currently exists.
Yeah.
And then you have to cross out, but still be able to read it. You have to cross out what you're removing, and then you put in bold and underlined what you're replacing it with. So
Oh.
you have to sort of understand that what you're looking at, because what you're looking at is messy. It's got things struck out, it's got things bold and in all caps, or, you know, bold and underlined. I mean, there have been numerous times where at the polls, a voter has come to me and said, "Can you explain this to me?
Right, I don't know."
They hand
Yep.
their ballot to me, and I'm like, no, unfortunately, here at the polls, I can't.
Yep.
You know, I can't talk about the ballot here at the polls. So I really encourage people, if you've got any questions about the charter changes, ask somebody before the election. You know, ask your counselor before the election. You know.
You can ask me
find
now.
You can ask, yeah, you can ask your representative. So, but yeah, it's it can really be confusing, and we've had some charter changes where there was tons of stuff on there, and it was very confusing.
The
you know.
school stuff was.
The last year
Right,
we
because
removed
that was wording
yeah,
and stuff.
Yeah, and it was, and you saw it. It appeared on the ballot as if we were getting rid of anything having to do with schools. Like we're no longer going to be electing school board members. We're no going, but it was just a technical cleanup because we now do all our school board elections through a different avenue. We still do them at the polls,
Yeah.
but through a different document. So.
That probably, I know that we've talked about that. That should have been fixed on the state legislature side when they did Act 46. Tell me how you feel about that.
No. I tried because I kept saying to them, if we don't take it out, we have two documents right now. We have the Articles of Agreement for the Unified Union School District, and we have the Barre City Charter that are in direct conflict with each other. And both of them are rule of law. So what do you do here?
But I remember
So-
charter always trumps everything.
Yeah, because charter is statute, and the
Right.
Articles of Agreement aren't statute.
Oh, so
So-
so we could have I mean, we really could have raked people over the
Well,
coals.
I
Oh.
can't begin to imagine that it would have flown, somewhere. And that's where the whole conundrum would have, turned into an ugly morass was, if
it
we
was
tried
already
to.
ugly enough.
Yeah.
Yeah. But this solved it. We just removed all the references to the school. And the references to the school in the charter go back to when there was a city school.
Yeah.
Both the city school and Spalding was a city high. I mean, it goes way back, and it was antiquated language, and so it was time. It's been superseded, so it made sense to get it out of the charter. So.
Yeah, I had to. There was actually some question about that, like, why are we removing this? And I'm like, because you guys didn't do it when you
know.
did Act 46.
I was watching you testify, but I wasn't, I hadn't been invited to the testimony, so I could just watch the YouTube live streaming, and I was talking to the screen.
I wasn't.
Here's a good answer. Here's a good answer.
I'm sorry.
No, it's not your
I'll
fault.
tell you.
You did admirably. So
I tried. I'm obviously not good.
well, I've had the privilege of doing probably for a good 10 years, if not a little longer. I've been able to do a fair amount of lobbying at the State House. Usually under the umbrella of the Municipal Clerk and Treasurers Association. I was their legislative committee chair for about 10 years. And there's a real art to it. There really is an art to it. To sharing your point of view, educating the legislators, and also not getting into battles with people who are on the other side.
Yeah.
Trying to find ways to find common ground. One of the things I early in my years of doing that kind of work, I used to say, well, why is it that the legislators aren't getting this? Why isn't that they, why do I have to do so much, educating to get them? But when you start looking at the amount of materials that you all have to read and absorb, of course you're not going to know. It's kind of like, if somebody went in to talk to you about medical malpractice, you're not going to know anything about medical malpractice. You're going to need to be educated. Mm-hmm. And it was the same thing with, clerk-related stuff. We talked about vital records or elections or stuff like that. You're not going to know. You're going to be dependent upon what people can teach you, and you're going to get different points of view.
Right.
So,
Yeah. I'll say there was a bill. It was like 150 pages. I still don't know what it was.
I know. You hope that whoever wrote, the little summary that's like the first couple paragraphs did a good job.
Yeah.
It was like uniform code something, and it was the I can't remember which office it was right now. I think it was the Secretary of State's office, and it's like, and he was reading it, and I'm thinking to myself, that and the unemployment one, and I was thinking to myself, this is somebody kill me. Somebody kill me. And they're talking, we're trying to homogenize this, harmonize this so that it's within this particular, and I'm thinking to myself, this is awful. But we were talking about TIF in the last couple days.
Yep.
And let me tell you, I knew what we were talking about, and I told the chair, I was like, I want to present this on the floor, but I probably won't be able to because it's not our bill. We just did a drive-by. I was so disappointed.
Yeah.
I would love to present that bill because I know that.
Right, you're
I know
passionate
TIF.
about that.
I know TIF.
Yeah.
And the
Tax
reason-
increment finance
sorry.
districts, for those who
Yes.
don't know the
Yes.
acronym. So
and it's a project-specific TIF. It's CHIP. It's called CHIP, which
Yeah.
is it's
Yeah,
for
I don't
housing.
know.
It's
Yeah.
like something housing
Improvement or something. Yeah.
program.
Yeah.
And it's designed specifically to take the TIF model to build housing for our communities.
Yep.
And so that's been like the exciting point in commerce and economic development. That, and we're taking up kids code, which I'm all about. That's anyway. So so we just wanted to bring you on. Anything else you want to tell us about?
Can't think of anything.
Can't think of anything.
Can't think of anything. Like I said, I'm working part-time for the town of Berlin. I'm actually still working part-time for the city of Barre. I am the TIF administrator for the city, because the city has a TIF district. And I'm working on that. We've got some exciting stuff happening around TIF. Because of the Seminary Street housing project, the building that's going to go up behind what was the Key Bank. There's going to be a new apartment building that's going to go up there, 22, 23 units, I think. And it's going to be built in the TIF district. There will be TIF-related infrastructure portions of that project. So we'll be going to the state to have an amendment to our TIF plan. Our TIF plan, which was approved back in 2012, was exclusively for parking improvements. And that was tied to the, sort of the rebirth of Blanchard Block and the construction of City Place, and the need for more parking to accommodate all those new employees that were coming in. But in the intervening 12 years, there's been so much change in the way people work.
Yep.
The 400 Agency of Transportation employees that are based out of City Place, they come to the office one day a week now.
Right. Yep.
And so we don't have the need for parking that we had 12 years ago. Now the need is housing.
Yep.
So we want to look at doing a change in the focus of our TIF district to work on housing. We've got a little bit of time before the end of the life of our TIF district, and we want to be able to take advantage of that little bit of time and capacity that we've got left to really concentrate on what Barre needs, which is housing. So,
I got a question for you about that.
okay.
Because I struggle with the housing issue. A part of me thinks, so we decrease our population, and yet our housing constraints are a huge problem. And I know in some municipalities, it's definitely people bought houses and they're not living in them, which is really frustrating.
Very
and I
much
think
so.
we should tax them like through the roof, because if you're not paying through income tax to the state of Vermont, you should be paying out your butt for property tax.
Well, and my understanding is that the tax bill includes, additional taxes on properties that are second homes owned by out-of-state
Right.
people.
I don't think so. I don't think
Last I heard, but these things are a movable feast. It may have been in the bill one day and out of the bill
Out of it
the next. So
I think it's down to 3 different categories if we're referring to the education,
Yes.
the education bill. But I don't think the category of people living in other states. I know that there was second homes, and then it was based on, I think, property assessed value.
That's what
Yeah.
But the thing that I would like to see is that if you don't live in Vermont, you get charged more. And the reason why I like that is because you're not paying into with your taxes.
Right.
And those people that have the second homes in Vermont, they can afford the taxes. But the people that have second homes from another state, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
But anyway, so I don't know where I was going with that. Oh, yeah. So why do you think we have a housing crunch?
I think there's a number of different things. I think it would be interesting to look at sort of average family size, because I think that we have gotten to the point where, one house maybe used to be 3 generations, parents, kids, grandparents. So there may have been 8 people living under one roof. I'm one person. I live in a house by myself.
Yep.
I'm taking up all that space all by myself.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
but that's part of it's part of it is that, you know, we've taken those family units and we've spread them more widely. So I think that that's something that plays into it. Certainly, as you talked about, we unfortunately have a number of properties that that have been bought up and are now being used as,
Second
you know,
homes or-
Airbnbs and stuff like that, and so are not available on the market for rentals, for, you know, residential rentals. People who want to live in a community, and that has taken inventory off the market. You know, I'm sure that there are other things, but that certainly is some of it. And the need is across the spectrum with regards to, you know, people talk about affordable housing. And to me, affordable housing is whatever is needed by a broad range of the market. You know, young homeowners need affordable housing. You know, young families with kids need whatever is affordable for them. Empty nesters need affordable housing, and again, but it may be a different kind of level of affordability. Seniors need a different level of affordability. So when I hear affordable housing, I think of it as what we need is a broad range of available housing. So
When we talk about seniors, and I hear people talk about this a lot lately when discussing the housing thing, in a lot of cases, staying in the home they already have is what's affordable because they own it and they've owned it for a
Right.
little while, and their expenses aren't as much as they would be if they moved. And sure, would it be great to get their 3 or 4 bedroom place on the market for a family coming in? But where can they affordably go, and where can they safely go?
Yeah, yeah.
You know, we had homes like the Manor, places like that that are no longer just for 65 and over.
Yep.
And so a lot has changed. And so I think that many people just choose to just stay in their home
yeah,
where they didn't a while ago either.
Yeah.
Or you have people, you know, my dad and I, we live together so that I can help my dad out. Yes, does it help me out as well? Absolutely. But he wouldn't need that big, huge house all by himself. But would he stay there anyways? Yes, because that's what would make sense.
Well, that's the thing. I mean, real estate, of course, has gone through the roof, you know, since COVID. And so you say to yourself, geez, my property's worth 3 times what it was when I bought it. I could sell it and make a mint and move somewhere else, but wherever you went to move
gonna cost
is
you
gonna
the mint.
cost it, right? Exactly. And of course, with interest rates on mortgages where they are,
Yeah.
you know, if you're living in a house where you've got a mortgage that you got back in, you know, 2015,
Yeah.
when interest rates were, you know, 3%,
Yep.
it's not to your benefit to move to another property where you're going to get an interest rate that's at least double that.
Right.
So
Yeah.
it's hard to figure out how to free up properties on the market and make them affordable for people at whatever level they want affordability. And you know, so there's definitely the need. And the need also is driven by, you talk about how, you know, the population has gone down, but we need people in Vermont.
Yeah.
We need people to move to Vermont.
Yeah, we do.
So, and that means we have to have the housing. You know, you probably know, as chair of the school board, you probably hear about it with new teachers or new administrators who want to move into the area.
Can't find
They
housing.
can't.
Exactly. You
It's
know.
insane.
Yeah.
It's really sad.
Yeah, I mean the Prospect Heights housing project that's being worked on up Prospect Street. You know, they're working. One of the main partners in that is the hospital, because the hospital has a tremendous need to be able to help new employees find housing. So,
And some of the problems with that project is that there's like environmental issues like that that are just causing monkey wrenches in that process, which is a standard problem in the state of Vermont. You know, with Act 250, everybody complains about it, but nobody really wants to change it because we don't like Act 250, but we kind of like Act 250.
Right.
We like our open farmland and, cows in the fields.
But, we don't like it.
Right.
Well, we don't like the bureaucracy tied to it.
Right.
I mean, I think that
Exactly.
certainly the intention behind it is
Exactly.
admirable.
Yep.
Because it's meant to help protect the environment, and the environment being not just green fields and things like that, but small towns and the sort of built and lived environment too. But it's so bureaucratic, and consequently it's so slow and it's so expensive, and it just adds to the cost of any project that's being considered. So.
All right. Well, Tina wants to say thank you for all that you do and have done. Little heart emoji right next to it.
Thanks, Tina. Is this Tina Ruth here?
Yeah, it is.
Hi, Tina.
All right. Well, Carol,
I need to call you, Tina, because I need to get an oil change. So, she'll now text me and say, when do you want to come in?
Right.
All right. Well, Carol, I do want to say thank you
Yes.
for coming on the Barre Beat. It's always
Nice
a
to be
pleasure to
here.
have you. And yeah, we really appreciate it. I love you so much.
Always a pleasure. Always a pleasure.
Great to have you.
All right. Well, I want to say thank you to everybody for watching the Barre Beat podcast live, streamed on 802 Scoop and filmed here on the Inside Scoop Studios. We hope that you guys have a great evening, and we will see you on Thursday for the weekly wrap.